February 8th, 1587. A queen, regal in her bearing, approaches her execution, unaware that even in death, the dignity she so fiercely guarded would be desecrated. What should have been a swift, merciful end to a life entangled in political machinations became a gruesome spectacle, forever etched in the annals of history and the memories of those who witnessed it. Mary Stewart, Queen of Scots, had once commanded nations and inspired loyalty. She had navigated treacherous palace intrigues, weathered religious storms, and endured years of imprisonment. Yet, on that desolate February morning at Fotheringhay Castle, she faced her ultimate challenge to maintain her regal composure as an inept executioner turned her death into a public humiliation. The events of that morning reverberate through time, a chilling reminder of the precarious balance between power, justice, and the dark abyss of cruelty. This is the tale of a queen who suffered not one death, but a torturous 3, before finally achieving eternal peace. In an era where royal blood was considered sacred, Mary's execution transcended the mere demise of a traitor. It represented a brutal clash of religious ideologies, dynastic ambitions, and the cold, calculating pragmatism of Renaissance politics. The late 16th century was an age of unprecedented religious and political turmoil across Europe. The Protestant Reformation had irrevocably fractured the unity of Christendom, igniting bloody conflicts between Catholics and Protestants that raged for generations. England, under the astute rule of Elizabeth I, had emerged as a staunch Protestant bastion, viewed with suspicion and hostility by Catholic powers like Spain and France, who considered it a heretical challenge to the established order. Mary Stuart's very existence posed a direct threat to Elizabeth's reign. As a devout Catholic with a legitimate claim to the English throne through her Tudor lineage, Mary embodied everything that Elizabeth's Protestant regime feared: foreign intervention, papal authority, and the potential restoration of Catholicism. From her birth in 1542, Mary had been a strategic pawn in the intricate game of European power politics, her hand in marriage used to forge alliances, and her existence leveraged by forces far exceeding the boundaries of her native Scotland. Her reign in Scotland was marked by turbulence and ultimately ended in ruin. A combination of political blunders, controversial marriages, and accusations of murder led to her forced abdication. Seeking refuge in England in 1567, she appealed to Elizabeth for sanctuary, expecting a bond of solidarity between fellow queens. Instead, she found herself a prisoner, her fate inextricably linked to the volatile currents of international diplomacy and religious conflict. For 19 long years, Mary was confined to various English castles, a potent symbol that Elizabeth and her advisors could not afford to ignore. Every Catholic conspiracy against Elizabeth's life implicated Mary as a central figure, whether by her conscious will or not. The Babington Plot of 1586 proved to be the final nail in the coffin, providing Elizabeth's government with the justification they needed to permanently resolve the problem of Mary Stewart. The decision to execute Mary was not made lightly. Elizabeth wrestled with the implications of signing the death warrant, acutely aware that executing an anointed queen would establish a dangerous precedent with far-reaching consequences. Foreign Catholic powers had already issued veiled threats of war should Mary come to harm. Yet, the powerful Protestant faction within the English court, spearheaded by figures like Sir Francis Walsingham and Lord Burghley, argued that England's very survival hinged on Mary's demise. Parliament had formally declared Mary guilty of treason in October 1586, yet Elizabeth delayed the execution for months, torn between political expediency and her own personal reservations. The warrant was eventually signed in February 1587, though Elizabeth would later claim she never intended for it to be carried out immediately. Whether this hesitation stemmed from genuine indecision or calculated political maneuvering, it added another layer of intrigue to the events surrounding Mary's final hours. The selection of Fotheringhay Castle as the site for the execution was deliberate and laden with symbolic weight. This imposing medieval fortress in Northamptonshire had a long and storied association with royal power and punishment. Its grand hall, where Mary would meet her end, had witnessed centuries of political drama and intrigue. The setting was intended to underscore the gravity of the proceedings while simultaneously distancing them from the potentially sympathetic crowds of London. As February 1587 dawned, the stage was set for one of the most controversial executions in English history. The religious wars engulfing Europe, the fierce personal rivalry between two queens, and the brutal pragmatism of Tudor politics were poised to converge in a single, shockingly mismanaged moment, one that would reverberate through the corridors of time. Dawn broke gray and unforgiving over Fotheringhay Castle on February 8, 1587. Mary Stewart had spent her last night in fervent prayer, attended by her devoted servants who had shared her long years of captivity. At 44, the woman once celebrated as the most beautiful queen in Europe bore the visible marks of nearly 2 decades of imprisonment. Yet her demeanor remained unmistakably regal, radiating an inner strength that belied her physical condition. The execution warrant had been read to her the previous evening. Mary received the news with remarkable composure, requesting only that she be granted sufficient time to prepare her soul for the journey ahead. She spent the remaining hours writing letters, distributing her few remaining possessions among her loyal servants, and entrusting her soul to God. Her unwavering Catholic faith, which had been both her greatest solace and the source of so much conflict, sustained her through these final moments. At 8 o'clock in the morning, the appointed officials arrived at her chambers. The Earls of Shrewsbury and Kent, both Protestant nobles who had overseen her captivity, came to escort her to the Great Hall. Accompanying them were the Sheriff of Northamptonshire and a contingent of other dignitaries, their faces etched with the solemn weight of their duty. The presence of so many high-ranking officials emphasized the unprecedented nature of the event that was about to unfold. Mary emerged from her chambers clad in black velvet, the customary attire for a woman in mourning, though whether she mourned for herself or for the tumultuous world that had brought her to this juncture remained unsaid. Over her gown, she wore a veil of pristine white, and around her waist, a silver crucifix, the symbols of her deeply held faith worn openly, defiantly, even in the heart of Protestant England. Her small entourage of servants, including her trusted physician, Bourgoin, and her loyal secretary, Melville, accompanied her on this final, poignant journey. The procession moved slowly, deliberately, through the castle corridors, past imposing tapestries and portraits that proclaimed England's power and glory. Mary walked with measured steps, her head held high, acknowledging no one. Those who witnessed her passage later remarked on her extraordinary dignity, her refusal to be hurried or treated like a common criminal. She was, after all, still a queen, and she was determined to die as one. The Great Hall of Fotheringhay had been transformed into a grim stage for the occasion. A scaffold, a mere 2 feet high and draped in somber black cloth, dominated the center of the room. Upon it rested a single chair and a chillingly stark chopping block, both covered in black velvet. Surrounding the scaffold, sturdy wooden barriers held back the assembled crowd of witnesses, local nobility, government officials, and carefully chosen commoners who would carry word of the proceedings to the wider world. The executioner stood silently beside his block, his face concealed behind a grotesque mask, his massive frame cloaked in black. The axe he would wield gleamed dully in the winter light that streamed through the hall's tall, arched windows. Everything had been meticulously prepared, yet no one in that crowded hall could have foreseen the horrific miscalculation that was about to unfold. As Mary entered the great hall, a profound hush fell over the assembled crowd. This was a moment of history in the making, the death of a crowned queen at the hands of her own subjects. The very air seemed to thicken with the weight of the moment, charged with religious tension, political intrigue, and raw human drama that would be recounted and debated long after all those present had returned to dust. Mary ascended the scaffold with the same unwavering dignity that had sustained her through the corridors of power and the long years of captivity. The crowd watched in absolute silence as she surveyed the scene that would bear witness to her final act on the world stage. Her gaze lingered on the block, the axe, and the masked figure who was about to end her life. Yet her expression remained unreadable, revealing nothing of her inner thoughts or emotions. The commission for the execution was read aloud, a lengthy and detailed recitation of her alleged crimes and the legal justifications for her death. Mary listened without visible emotion, occasionally closing her eyes as if in silent prayer. When asked if she had any final words, she spoke with clarity and without trembling, declaring her innocence of the specific charges against her while reaffirming her unwavering Catholic faith and her hope for England's eventual return to the true religion. With practiced hands, Mary's servants began to assist her in disrobing. This was the prescribed ritual. The condemned must face death in simple clothing, stripped of all external trappings of rank and power. As they removed her black velvet gown, a collective gasp arose from the crowd. Beneath her somber mourning clothes, Mary wore a bodice and skirt of deep, vibrant crimson, the color of martyrdom, the color of the blood she was about to shed for her faith. The symbolism was unmistakable and deliberately provocative. Mary had chosen to die not as a traitor to England, but as a martyr for the Catholic cause. The crimson silk seemed to glow in the dim light of the hall, transforming her from a condemned prisoner into a religious icon before the very eyes of those present. Her servants completed their solemn task with trembling hands, their own eyes brimming with unshed tears. Mary approached the block with steady steps, pausing only to offer forgiveness to the executioner for what he was about to do. This gesture of grace, traditionally extended by nobility facing death, took on an added poignancy given the horror that was about to transpire. She knelt beside the block, carefully arranging her skirts with the same meticulous attention she might have shown in preparing for a royal court ceremony. The final preparations were completed in tense, suffocating silence. Mary positioned her head upon the block, whispering fervent prayers in Latin that echoed softly through the hall. Her hands, bound before her, clasped a small crucifix, her final act of defiance in a Protestant realm. The executioner raised his axe, the crowd held its collective breath, and history prepared to witness an act of barbarity disguised as justice. Those present would later struggle to adequately describe the atmosphere in those final seconds before the axe fell. Some spoke of an almost supernatural stillness, as if the very air had become thick with anticipation. Others remembered the sound of Mary's quiet prayers, a gentle murmur that seemed to sanctify the barbaric proceedings. All would agree that they had never witnessed such composed courage in the face of impending death. The executioner's axe reached its apex, poised to deliver what should have been a swift, merciful end to decades of political maneuvering and religious conflict. In that frozen moment, Mary Stewart ceased to be a mere political problem and became something far more dangerous to her enemies, a potent symbol of unwavering faith triumphant over worldly power, of dignity maintained in the face of ultimate humiliation. The first blow landed with a sickening thud that shattered the stunned silence of the great hall. But instead of the clean severance that would have ended Mary's suffering instantly, the axe struck the back of her skull, cutting deep into bone and flesh, but failing to sever the neck completely. A collective gasp of horror erupted from the witnesses as Mary's body convulsed, and a low, guttural moan escaped her lips, the first and only sound of pain she had allowed herself to utter. Blood began to pool beneath the block as the executioner, his hands now trembling uncontrollably with the realization of his horrific error, raised the axe once more. The crowd watched in horrified fascination as Mary's fingers twitched slightly, her body stubbornly clinging to life despite the devastating wound to her head. What should have been a moment of solemn justice had been transformed into a grotesque spectacle that would haunt every witness for the rest of their days. The second blow came down with desperate force, this time finding its intended mark at the base of Mary's neck, but the executioner's nerve had been irrevocably shattered, his aim compromised by the sheer horror of his initial failure. The axe bit deep, but did not sever completely, leaving Mary's head hanging precariously by sinew and skin, her life's blood flowing freely across the black-draped scaffold. The crowd could hear the executioner's labored breathing behind his mask, punctuated by whispered prayers and curses. For long, agonizing seconds, Mary's body lay motionless while the executioner struggled to comprehend the magnitude of his failure. 2 strikes of the axe, and still the deed was not done. The official witnesses stood frozen in shock, uncertain whether to intervene or allow the butchery to continue. Some of the women in the crowd had averted their gaze or begun to weep openly, while others stared in morbid fascination at the unfolding disaster. The third blow fell with the fury of desperation, the executioner summoning every ounce of his remaining strength to complete the grisly task. This time, mercifully, the severance was complete, Mary's head finally separating from her tortured body in a ghastly spray of blood that spattered the scaffold and the closest witnesses. The sound of the axe striking the block beneath echoed through the hall like a mournful death knell, marking the end of one of the most horrifically botched executions in recorded history. But even death could not spare Mary from further indignity, as the executioner bent to retrieve her severed head, intending to display it to the crowd as was customary. His trembling hands grasped nothing but a wig of auburn curls. Mary's head fell back to the scaffold with a dull, sickening thud, revealing her natural hair, thin, gray, and prematurely aged by years of stress and captivity. The beautiful queen who had once captivated European courts was revealed in death as a middle-aged woman worn down by suffering and loss. The crowd's reaction was immediate and visceral. Gasps of shocked disbelief gave way to horrified murmurs as witnesses struggled to process what they had just seen. Some crossed themselves, whether in prayer for Mary's soul or in superstitious ward against the evil they felt they had witnessed. Others simply stared in stunned silence, their minds unable to reconcile the dignity of Mary's final moments with the sheer barbarity of her actual death. As if the scene were not gruesome enough, a small commotion near the scaffold drew every eye. From beneath Mary's crimson skirts emerged her small dog, a Skye terrier that had somehow concealed itself within her clothing and accompanied her even to the block. The tiny creature, its white fur now stained with its mistress's blood, ran in confused circles around the scaffold, whimpering pitifully as it searched for the woman who would never comfort it again. Robert Melville, Mary's loyal secretary, who had served her faithfully through years of captivity, stood among the official witnesses, with tears streaming down his weathered face. In letters written immediately after the execution, he described the scene as the most pitiful sight that ever was seen, his usual diplomatic composure shattered by the horrific spectacle he had witnessed. Melville's account, preserved in the Scottish archives, provides one of the most detailed and harrowing contemporary descriptions of the execution's catastrophic mismanagement. Dr. Bourgogne, Mary's French physician, later testified that he had never witnessed such incompetence in all his years of attending executions across Europe. His medical training allowed him to observe, with clinical detachment, the executioner's failures, noting that the first blow had fractured Mary's skull without severing the vital arteries, unnecessarily prolonging her agony. His testimony would become crucial evidence in the subsequent investigation into how such a disaster had occurred. The Earl of Shrewsbury, one of the commissioners overseeing the execution, was observed to have turned pale and begun trembling visibly after the first botched blow. Contemporary accounts describe him as much moved and troubled by what he witnessed, a remarkable display of emotion from a man who had overseen Mary's captivity for years. His official report to Elizabeth was notably brief, glossing over the gruesome details while emphasizing Mary's dignity and composure in the face of death. Local witnesses, carefully selected to spread word of the execution throughout the realm, instead carried tales of horror that undermined the government's intended message. A blacksmith from the nearby town of Untold later recounted how he had expected to witness justice being served, but instead saw a butchery most foul, unfit for any Christian soul. Such testimonies spread rapidly through the common folk, transforming Mary in the popular imagination from a traitor to a martyr. The executioner himself, whose identity was kept secret for his own protection, reportedly fled Fotheringhay immediately after the proceedings. Later accounts suggest he was found dead in his lodgings several days later, though whether from guilt, fear, or other causes remains shrouded in mystery. His assistant, who had helped prepare the scaffold, was said to have been so traumatized by the events that he abandoned his profession entirely and sought refuge in a monastery. Foreign ambassadors, though not present at the execution itself, quickly gathered detailed accounts from multiple sources. The Spanish ambassador dispatched to Philip II described the proceedings as evidence of English barbarism and God's judgment upon Protestant heretics. The French ambassador, representing Mary's former in-laws, used the gruesome details to justify increased support for Catholic plots against Elizabeth's reign. Even Protestant observers struggled to reconcile their religious convictions with what they had witnessed. A local minister who had been present to offer Mary final spiritual counsel wrote that while he could not condone her Catholic faith, he had never seen greater Christian fortitude in the face of death. His congregation would later remember his troubled demeanor in the weeks following the execution as he grappled with the theological implications of such profound suffering. The immediate aftermath at Fotheringhay was one of shocked silence and hurried cleanup. Servants moved swiftly to remove the blood-stained scaffold materials, while officials debated how best to report the disaster to London. The castle's Great Hall, a witness to centuries of royal ceremony, had been transformed into a charnel house that would forever bear the stain of that February morning's harrowing events. News of Mary's botched execution reached Elizabeth I at Greenwich Palace within hours, carried by swift messengers who had ridden through the night. The Queen's reaction, witnessed by her closest courtiers, was a carefully orchestrated blend of genuine horror at the manner of Mary's death and calculated political theater designed to distance herself from the gruesome proceedings. Elizabeth reportedly fainted upon hearing the details, though cynical observers noted her quick recovery and her immediate focus on damage control. The international repercussions were swift and severe. Philip II of Spain, already preparing his formidable armada against England, seized upon Mary's martyrdom as further justification for a holy war against the Protestant heretics. Pamphlets depicting Mary's execution in lurid detail circulated throughout Catholic Europe, transforming her from a politically inconvenient claimant into a saint-like figure whose suffering demanded vengeance. The botched nature of the execution only served to amplify her status as a martyr. Pope Sixtus V, who had previously been lukewarm toward Mary's claims, now posthumously embraced her cause with fervent zeal. The gruesome details of her execution provided powerful propaganda for the Counter-Reformation, with Catholic preachers using the story to illustrate Protestant cruelty and the redemptive power of suffering for the faith. Mary's transformation from a troublesome claimant to a martyred saint was complete, achieved not through her life, but through the circumstances of her agonizing death. In Scotland, Mary's son James VI faced an impossibly delicate political situation. Though he had done nothing to save his mother's life, indeed, had tacitly accepted it as the price of his future succession to the English throne, he now had to publicly respond to the widespread outrage without jeopardizing his chances of inheriting Elizabeth's crown. His carefully worded protests satisfied neither Scottish honor nor English interests, leaving him politically vulnerable on both sides of the border. Elizabeth's government moved quickly to deflect blame for the execution's mismanagement. Scapegoats were found among the lower-ranking officials who had organized the proceedings, while the Privy Council launched investigations designed more to exonerate the crown than to uncover the truth. The executioner's convenient death eliminated the most obvious target for public anger, though rumors persisted that he had been silenced to prevent potentially embarrassing revelations from coming to light. French reaction was particularly complex, given Mary's status as a former queen consort and the mother of James VI. While officially Protestant, England and Catholic France maintained a delicate balance of power. The French court had engaged in diplomatic relations with both Elizabeth and Mary. The botched nature of the execution provided ammunition for French Catholics seeking to undermine their country's pragmatic foreign policy, potentially destabilizing the intricate network of European alliances. The propaganda war that erupted in the aftermath of the execution proved to be more damaging to England than the political elimination of Mary had been beneficial. Catholic Europe now possessed a powerful martyr whose suffering could be invoked to justify almost any action against Protestant England. The image of Mary dying with unwavering dignity while her Protestant executioners butchered her became a potent rallying cry that would outlive both Elizabeth and her reign. Within England itself, reaction was sharply divided along religious and class lines. Protestant authorities emphasized Mary's treason and the justice of her sentence, while simultaneously attempting to suppress detailed accounts of the execution's mismanagement. Among Catholics and those sympathetic to Mary's cause, however, the story spread rapidly, embellished with each retelling, until it became a legendary tale of martyrdom that would inspire resistance for generations to come. The anonymous executioner chosen to carry out Mary's death sentence was reportedly selected for his extensive experience and proven reliability in such grim tasks. Executioners in Tudor England were typically professionals who traveled from town to town, their services in high demand for the frequent public executions that served as both a form of punishment and a source of popular entertainment. Yet the man who ascended the scaffold at Fotheringhay that fateful February morning would achieve a level of notoriety that haunted the profession for decades to come. Contemporary records suggest that the executioner had successfully carried out numerous previous executions, including those of other high-ranking nobles condemned for treason. The precise skill required to sever a head cleanly with a single stroke came only with years of practice and unwavering nerves. Yet, something went catastrophically wrong on February 8, 1587. Whether due to nervousness at executing royalty, faulty equipment, or a simple tragic lapse in judgment, the reason for his failure remains a mystery. The psychological impact of his failure was immediately apparent to those who witnessed the execution. After the third blow finally completed the gruesome task, observers noted that the executioner was trembling uncontrollably, his usual professional composure completely shattered. The ritualistic display of the severed head to the crowd, which should have marked the successful completion of his duty, became yet another source of humiliation when Mary's wig came away in his hands. Guild records from the period indicate that the executioner's failure at Fotheringhay effectively ended his career. Professional executioners depended entirely on their reputation for clean, efficient work. A botched execution reflected not only on the individual but on the entire profession. Word of the disaster spread quickly through the network of traveling executioners, making the unnamed man a pariah among his own kind. The executioner's reported death within days of the execution has never been definitively explained by historians. Some contemporary accounts suggest suicide, driven by overwhelming guilt and professional shame, while others hint at more sinister explanations, such as silencing by government agents concerned about potentially damaging revelations. The truth remains lost to the mists of time, but the symbolism is undeniable. Even the instrument of Mary's death could not escape the tragedy's pervasive shadow. Local folklore in Northamptonshire preserves chilling tales of the executioner's restless ghost haunting the roads near Fotheringhay Castle, eternally doomed to attempt to complete his failed task. While such stories should be regarded as mere superstition, they nevertheless reflect the profound psychological impact that the botched execution had on the local community. The tragedy traumatized not only those who were present at Fotheringhay, but entire communities that felt the weight of the shameful proceedings. The technical aspects of the executioner's failure became the subject of intense speculation among experts in such matters. Some suggested that Mary's positioning on the block had been incorrect, while others blamed a dull axe or the executioner's unfamiliarity with the specific equipment provided at Fotheringhay. The enduring mystery of how such an experienced professional could fail so spectacularly added another layer of intrigue to an already deeply controversial event. The broader impact on the profession was both significant and lasting. Public confidence in the competence of executioners was shaken, leading to widespread demands for improved training and more stringent oversight. Some nobles condemned to death in subsequent years specifically requested alternative methods of execution rather than risk a similar botched beheading. The specter of Mary's prolonged suffering haunted every scaffold in England for years to come. Among all the horrific details of Mary's execution, none proved to be more emotionally resonant than the image of her small Skye terrier emerging from beneath her blood-soaked skirts. The little dog, which contemporary accounts describe as being white with distinctive brown markings, had somehow managed to conceal itself within the folds of Mary's crimson dress, accompanying its beloved mistress even to the execution block in a display of unwavering loyalty that moved even the most hardened hearts among the witnesses. The breed of the dog itself was significant. Skye Terriers originated from the rugged Scottish Highlands and were renowned for their fierce devotion to their masters. Mary's decision to keep such a distinctly Scottish breed during her long years of English captivity may have been a subtle, yet powerful assertion of her enduring identity as the Queen of Scotland. The dog had been her constant companion throughout her years of imprisonment, providing invaluable comfort and affection in circumstances where both were exceedingly rare. Witness accounts describe the heart-wrenching scene as the blood-stained animal ran in confused circles around the scaffold, searching frantically for its mistress and whimpering pitifully. The sight of this innocent creature, traumatized and bewildered by the violence it had witnessed, provided a stark and poignant contrast to the cold, calculating political and religious justifications that had been offered for Mary's execution. Here was pure, unconditional love confronted with inexplicable cruelty. The profound symbolism was not lost on contemporary observers, nor on later historians and writers who would retell the story of Mary's execution for generations to come. The dog's presence transformed Mary's death from a mere matter of state policy into something deeply personal and emotionally charged. Catholic commentators would later invoke the image of the loyal dog to illustrate the unwavering constancy of faith in the face of persecution, while even Protestant accounts struggled to dismiss the powerful emotional impact of the scene. Dr. Bourguignon, Mary's trusted physician, took responsibility for the traumatized animal following the execution. Contemporary letters describe his tender efforts to care for the grieving creature, which reportedly refused food for days and exhibited clear signs of profound melancholy. The dog's unmistakable grief became yet another testament to Mary's character. Even her pets mourned her loss with human-like sorrow, suggesting the depth of affection she inspired in all who knew her personally. The fate of Mary's dog became a minor obsession among those who followed the unfolding story of her execution. Some accounts suggest that the animal was eventually returned to Scotland, where it lived out its remaining years under the care of Mary's former supporters. Others claim that it died of grief within weeks of its mistress's death, unable to recover from the trauma of that devastating February morning. The lingering uncertainty surrounding the dog's fate only added to the pathos of the overall narrative. Artists and writers in subsequent centuries would frequently include the dog in their depictions of Mary's execution, recognizing its powerful symbolic value. The enduring image of innocent loyalty bearing witness to incomprehensible violence spoke to universal themes that transcended the specific religious and political conflicts of the 16th century. The dog became a lasting symbol of all that was lost when political necessity overrode basic human compassion. The presence of the dog also served to highlight the profound personal cost of Mary's long years of imprisonment. While historians continue to debate the ultimate justice of her execution and the complex politics of her captivity, the sight of her faithful companion served as a poignant reminder that behind the royal titles and political machinations was a woman who had lived, loved, and inspired genuine devotion in those closest to her. The dog's unwavering loyalty stood as a mute testament to the human dimension of a tragedy that politics had, in many ways, dehumanized. The execution of Mary, Queen of Scots, marked a profound turning point in European attitudes towards royal authority and the concept of divine right. For centuries, the widely held belief that kings and queens ruled by God's direct appointment had provided a theoretical layer of protection even for deposed monarchs. Mary's death at the hands of her own subjects shattered this long-held assumption, establishing a precedent that would reverberate through the tumultuous years of the English Civil War and beyond, eventually shaping the age of democratic revolution. The outraged reaction of Catholic Europe to Mary's martyrdom contributed significantly to the prevailing climate that ultimately led to the launch of the Spanish Armada in 1588. Philip II's massive invasion fleet carried banners emblazoned with depictions of Mary's execution, effectively transforming a complex political and strategic conflict into a holy war of vengeance. Although the Armada ultimately met with defeat, the enduring propaganda value of Mary's suffering continued to inspire Catholic resistance to Protestant rule throughout Elizabeth's long reign and for many years thereafter. The botched nature of the execution had far-reaching consequences that extended far beyond the immediate horror it engendered. Professional executioners throughout Europe faced increased scrutiny and demands for competency, leading to improvements in execution techniques and equipment. The enduring image of royal dignity, maintained even in the face of incompetent brutality, became a defining template for noble behavior, influencing how subsequent condemned monarchs would conduct themselves in the face of death. In Scotland, Mary's execution profoundly complicated the eventual union of the English and Scottish crowns under her son, James VI of Scotland, who would also become James I of England. While James ultimately inherited both thrones, the brutal manner of his mother's death created lasting resentment among the Scottish people, deeply influencing Anglo-Scottish relations for generations to come. The execution became a potent symbol of English arrogance and disregard for Scottish sensibilities, a sentiment that persisted well into the modern era. The religious dimensions of Mary's death had an equally lasting and transformative impact. Catholic martyrology quickly embraced her story, and she was venerated as a saint by many believers long before any official recognition was ever considered. Protestant historians, meanwhile, found themselves struggling to reconcile their approval of her execution with their profound embarrassment over its horrific mismanagement. The complex theological implications of a crowned queen dying for her faith challenged both Catholic and Protestant concepts of divine authority, forcing a reassessment of traditional beliefs. Literary and artistic representations of Mary's execution began to emerge within years of her death and have continued to captivate audiences for centuries. From contemporary ballads to Victorian paintings to modern films, the compelling story of her botched execution has captured imaginations across cultures and eras. The consistent focus on the executioner's incompetence and Mary's unwavering dignity suggests that there is something in this tale that resonates with universal human concerns about justice, suffering, and the ability to display grace under immense pressure. Modern historians continue to debate whether Mary's execution was ultimately justified by the prevailing standards of her time, but few question its profound and lasting impact on the course of subsequent European history. The precedent of executing a legitimate monarch for treason would be directly cited during the tumultuous years of the English Civil War, when Charles I faced a similar fate. The notion that royal blood offered no ultimate protection from the consequences of political action became a cornerstone of the evolving concept of constitutional government. The forensic details of Mary's execution also contributed to the gradual shift in attitudes toward capital punishment. The graphic descriptions of her prolonged suffering provided powerful ammunition for those who questioned whether any method of execution could truly be considered humane. While such debates would not fully bear fruit for centuries, the seeds of modern opposition to the death penalty can be traced in part to the widespread revulsion against spectacles such as Mary's botched beheading. The death of Mary, Queen of Scots, serves as a stark reminder that history's most significant moments often hinge on the competence and actions of ordinary individuals performing extraordinary tasks. What should have been a clean and efficient political solution to decades of intense international tension instead became a potent symbol of brutality and injustice that ultimately outlasted the political circumstances that had created it. The executioner's tragic failure transformed a state-sanctioned execution into a martyr's passion, achieving for Mary in death the sympathy and reverence that had largely eluded her throughout her turbulent life. The tragedy at Fotheringhay Castle vividly illustrates how the relentless pursuit of political necessity can strip away the veneer of civilization, exposing the raw violence that lies at the heart of all state power. Elizabeth's government sought to eliminate a perceived threat while simultaneously maintaining the carefully constructed appearance of legal justice, yet the botched execution laid bare the essential brutality of their chosen solution. No amount of legal procedure or religious justification could ultimately disguise the fundamental truth that they had coldly ordered the killing of a woman whose primary crime was simply existing as an inconvenient reminder of alternative political possibilities. Mary's unwavering dignity in death stands in stark contrast to the abject incompetence of those charged with carrying out her execution. While her executioner trembled and failed, while witnesses wept openly and averted their gaze in horror, Mary herself maintained the regal composure that had sustained her through a lifetime of political turmoil and intrigue. Her final performance as a queen, and a performance it certainly was, achieved more for her enduring reputation than any military victory or political triumph in life ever could have. The image of the blood-stained dog searching in vain for its dead mistress provides perhaps the most enduring and emotionally powerful symbol of the entire tragic event. In that innocent creature's bewildered confusion and profound grief, we see a clear reflection of the true cost of political calculation measured in purely human terms. The dog's unconditional loyalty, unstained by religious or political considerations, stands as a silent but forceful rebuke to the complex and often self-serving justifications that brought Mary to the execution block and left her there to die so cruelly. The lasting fascination with Mary's execution reveals something fundamental about human nature and our complex relationship with power. We are instinctively drawn to stories of dignity maintained in the face of ultimate adversity, of grace under pressure that transcends the immediate circumstances. Mary's death became a legend not because she was entirely innocent, the political charges against her contained a considerable element of truth, but because she faced an ugly and unjust death with unwavering fortitude and an undeniable sense of regal bearing. Perhaps the most sobering lesson of Mary's execution is the stark realization of how quickly political calculations can spiral beyond the control of those who make them. Elizabeth's government sought to solve a problem quietly and efficiently, yet the executioner's incompetence created a propaganda disaster that inadvertently strengthened the very Catholic cause they had hoped to weaken. The yawning gap between intention and outcome serves as a cautionary tale about the unpredictable and often devastating consequences of state-sponsored violence. The enduring story of Mary's execution continues to resonate with us today because it seamlessly combines universal themes such as loyalty, betrayal, suffering, and dignity with the specific historical moment that irrevocably shaped the political landscape of modern Europe. Mary's death marked not only the end of one era, but the tumultuous beginning of another, a violent transition from medieval concepts of sacred kingship to modern ideas about the inherent limitations of royal power. In our own age, when political violence and the use of state power remain deeply contentious issues, the tragic story of Mary's execution offers valuable lessons about the profound costs of treating human beings as mere political problems to be solved. The woman who died at Fotheringhay was so much more than the sum of her religious beliefs or her dynastic claims. She was, first and foremost, a person who was capable of inspiring deep love and loyalty in a small dog and of maintaining unwavering dignity in the face of unspeakable brutality. That essential humanity, most clearly revealed in her final harrowing moments, may ultimately be her most enduring legacy. So, the story of Mary, Queen of Scots, isn't just about political maneuvering and religious conflict. It's a potent reminder that even in the darkest moments, dignity and unwavering spirit can shine through. It's a story of a woman facing unimaginable circumstances with remarkable grace, and a testament to the enduring power of human connection, even symbolized by the loyalty of a small dog. Ultimately, it asks us to consider the human cost of power and the legacy we leave behind. What are your thoughts? I'd love to hear your interpretations of Mary's story, any questions you have, or perhaps any aspects you found particularly striking. Please feel free to share your comments below. And if you found this video insightful, don't forget to subscribe. That way, you won't miss out on future explorations of fascinating historical events and the powerful human stories they hold. Thanks for watching.